Welcome all. So today I'm going to take the part 2 of my beginners learning Blazor series, and we are going to discuss two-way binding, two-way data binding. Okay, so the outcomes of this lecture is that we shall discuss the concept of two-way binding in Blazor and create a Blazor component which collects form-based user data and demonstrates two-way binding by rendering user updated data on the browser immediately. Okay, so a little bit of basics about two-way binding. So it has a two-directional flow. It allows values to be updated from two directions. So as the user types in the data into an input form control, the data updates and renders on the browser. Okay. The two-way bindings can be used anywhere that an application needs a user input, that is primary use still being in forms, but there is no bar from using a console application that also can take user input, so you can also use a console application. So now we'll switch over to the Visual Studio and then start coding, and then I'll come back at the end of the Visual Studio project for two-way binding and learn a little bit of recap a bit of things. Okay, so there we go. Now before we switch over to Visual Studio, the final point was that the two-way binding is basically used through the bind attribute. There are various forms of bind attribute which we'll see in the Visual Studio, and I will discuss it at the end of the video. So let's flip over to Visual Studio now. So going over to Visual Studio, I have created a basic project, and that was showing that one-way data binding from the last tutorial, and I will now create a two-way data binding project. So rather two-way data binding component, Razor component. So what I do is to right click the pages folder, click on add, new item, Razor component, and name this Razor component as two-way binding, two-way data binding. So it creates the two-way data binding component for me. So now on top of this, I'll have to put this page directive, act page directive, so that it is routed to the appropriate page. So I'll next have to create the navigation for the two-way binding, but that will come in a bit. So two-way, it has to be the same name as this component name, two-way data binding, two-way data binding. Okay, so now I'll come back to the nav menu and create a navigation link so that I don't have to type the navigation link again and again. Okay, so I'll make it two-way binding, and right over here. Now this href is because it is referring to this two-way data binding, so I'll have to be correct over at that point. So it has to be two-way data binding, and here I can write anything, but I'll two-way binding. Okay, now next is over to this tab again, two-way data binding.razor, this component, and then I'll start. This is the code block. So now I will come to the code block where I'll need to declare the variables and the properties. So in this example, I will show you the use of enum. The enum data type is also, supported by Blazor. So, and I will name this employee type, this enum. What it contains is 3 elements: employee, contractor, and the last one is intern. Okay, and semicolon, and then I will use this employee type enum to create a type of employee, and that will be a public property. So let me, rather I'll name it private. So keep it private because I just want to use it within this code in this page only, and then this component. So private, now instead of int it will return a employee type, and this, the name of this private property is type of employee. Type of employee and get set. Now I will initialize, and the meaning will be clear in a bit. Employee type dot employee. So I have initialized this property with the employee value of employee type enum, right? And next, the creation of a few more properties. So I find this easier. Just replace it with private, and then this will be a string, and private string name get set. I will not initialize this, and I will just copy it over. I have to create another 3 properties, so they will be clear in a minute. Okay, indent them a little bit. So rename this property as, this is the is manager, whether the employee is a manager or not. It's a boolean, it returns a boolean, and set it to false to start with, and then private string, instead of this will be a static integer, static int age, and then there will be salary, which is if type decimal. So decimal is also supported by Blazor framework. So private decimal salary. Now this static keyword you might remove. I'm not sure why it was kept in the first place, so let me remove this. Okay, so next is code block is taken care of. So it will now create no niggles for me. That squiggly lines otherwise would have come. So now here what I intend to show is to write a form and take the user inputs into the form, and when the form fields are tapped away, I'll show you how it gets updated on the paragraph. So let's create the paragraph here. Could have as well created a table. It's your choice, but I wanted to quickly show you. So enter, just prompt, enter you prompt the user on this form, enter your name, and then that will be a type text, input type equals text. Okay, so input type text, and now as I showed to you quickly that bind is the main attribute, and it takes many forms for two-way data binding. So we'll embark into that in a bit. So add bind equals assigned at name. The first one is this property name. The name is bound two-way at name. And then there is a break it to the next line. Enter your name, and then I'll just copy it over to save a lot of typing time. I'm not very good at typing. I mean, try to save time typing the same thing which it could be copied over and then changed. So now enter your age. So this time it is going to be input type again a text, and then this will come from this property age. So at age it will be. Okay, and then break, and then finally your salary. Enter name, age, and salary. And this will be salary at salary at the rate salary. Okay. And then the next piece of code is to test whether you are a manager or not. So there will be another prompt, are you a manager? Sorry about the typo, are you a manager? And then it has to be a checkbox, not a text box, but a checkbox input. And type is a checkbox, and it is bound to this boolean is manager. Input type checkbox and add bind attribute. Add bind equals, it's silly, it's trying to be very smart, this intelligence. So add bind equals again at is manager. What's the problem here? It is not showing. Okay. I didn't close the quotes, so that is what it was showing. It was not showing. So now it is all done. So is manager. It will show IntelliSense completed this part. Right, and then another break to break over to the next line, and then I'll put a select box, a drop down list. So select ID equals, let me make it select box. So select ID is select box, and this is bound to, this will be bound to the type of employee, which is here, which is the employee type enum, bound to type of employee. So type of employee, yeah, it is completed by IntelliSense. It's fantastic, isn't it? This IntelliSense business. Okay, now end select, and within select and end select, as you could rightly guess that this drop down list has got a collection of things to choose from. So this that is provided by this enum, which has got 3 different categories of employees: employee, contractor, and intern. Okay, so that is the correct way to implement a select box. So option, next comes option, and then value equals at employee type dot, these are the 3 options. So at employee type dot, get rid of these codes. So employee type dot employee, right? Then option closed, and then if you end the option over here, then in between you have to write employee type at employee type, same thing, at the rate employee type, because it is, you are writing C# code, which is formed by at the rate. So I am just going to repeat it once more, but let me make it to string, so that it is forced to be a string. Okay, so option value, end option. Now again copy it over, and the third option is, the last option is, it's running away from me, it's trying to excuse me, trying to intend it. So this time it will be employee type dot, what other options are there? Contractor and then intern. So employee type dot contractor dot to string, end option, and employee type dot intern. So employee type dot intern dot to string to make it string. Okay, so that's all done for this select box, and now a little bit more is left. This paragraph has finished here. This is actually representing the form, and then comes the next part, where I would like to write the this part. You will receive the inputs from form and update on the paragraph. This is just a comment. Okay, so how to make sure that this is a comment? So I'll just click on comment out the selected lines. Okay, so this will not be executed, just for the purpose of readability. Now here all I have to do is a few more lines, an h2 header, hello. Now because it is, two-way data binding we are demonstrating, we are teaching, so hello at the rate of name, hello name, whatever name has been input by the user in the input element. So hello at name, that I will expect to be written within this headers, and we'll see in a bit. Everything is in action. Now I want this to also pick up the age, salary, and the fact that if he is a manager or not. So I will get those details and update in a two-way binding here. So you are dollar at the rate age, not dollar, I'm sorry. You are at the rate age years old. Okay. you are getting a salary of that will be dollar and at the rate, and then it picks up from this variable, this property at salary. Okay, double click to put it through. So you are this many years old and you are getting a salary of $500, 5,000, whatever. Okay, the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle is that I have to use this is manager. So how do I use it? So within an if statement, if is manager, the condition is if manager is clicked, that checkbox is checked, and the type of employee is employee, he has to be the condition is to be checking that checkbox is manager, and the employee has to be an employee. Employee type has to be not an contractor, neither an intern, but it has to be an employee, permanent employee, to be for him to be a valid manager. Okay, so at type of employee at the rate, for it to dictate that this is C# equals at the rate employee type dot employee. Just put the at the rate in the beginning. So if he is a manager and also an employee, then you just write you are a manager else within paragraph and end paragraph section, it will now write what type of an employee. If you are not a manager, what type of an employee you are. So you are at the rate type of employee. Sorry. That's it. So now I will build and run the application. So just click on Control F5. So I now have this two-way binding navigation menu on the left hand side, and see, this is the form appears, and it's not very cool, very nice, because it was all done in paragraph, but that's okay. It is for demonstrating. So enter your name. So my name is Kaushik, and you can see it is still not updated, but as I tab away, it writes the name. Enter your age, say 60. So you are 60 years old, and salary. So you are getting a salary of this as I tab out. And are you a manager? Right? You are a manager. So if I click on contractor, you are a contractor. So for a manager to appear as you are a manager, then you have to not only check this checkbox, but you have to click on employee. Manager has to be an employee. So that's about it. But before leaving, I will just show you a few more things. Now, remember at the beginning, I have told that the bind attribute for two-way data binding has several forms. It is very versatile and flexible. So it has three different forms, and these various forms allow developers to be specific about how to implement the binding. The first one we have seen, that add bind equals property. That was simple. The second form is add bind value equals property, and the third variant is at bind value equals property at bind value event. Then this is the property, this is the event equals on event. So I will just demo that. Now I have just now shown that you need to tab away from the input box in order for that to be data bound and shown to the paragraph. But what if you would like, as you're typing, the same time the output needs to be updated. The data needs to be updated on the paragraph itself. For that, you have got this, what I've shown you. So I will just modify this code a little bit. So input type will still be the text, but this bind will be bind value name, and then corresponding bind value event. It will be just clear in a minute. Bind value and then the colon event. It is showing that specifies the event handler name to attach for change notification for the value provided. Okay, so this will be on event bind value colon event equals, this is on input, this is on input event. Okay, so similarly I will make this change over here with the age and salary. Bind value equals age, still the same, and bind value event again on input. So this part I will just copy. On input, and again on this last one it will be the same. Bind value equals at salary and bind value event on input. So on inputting, that is a function just like JavaScript, on change event for click, for the button click. So here it is on inputting input box, that is the event name on input. So again here, and then I will run this application once more. Control F5. So let me write my name again. So this time you can see that as I am typing, it is getting updated below, and age, say 61, enter your salary. You can see it is getting updated in real time. Your manager, it is the same thing. Contractor, you are a contractor, but if you click on employee, you are a manager. So that's all for today. But before leaving, let us see what we have learned today. So we discussed the concept of basic two-way binding in Blazor and created a Blazor component which collects form-based user data and demonstrates two-way data binding by rendering user updated data on the browser immediately.